أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على خير المرسلين ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. The topic that I'm going to speak about today is an introduction to the science of Tasawwuf, and it will be based in the last chapter of a famous poem written by a alim from Morocco, Sidi Abd al-Ashir. The famous poem entitled Al-Murshid al-Mu'in, or practical guidebook, or the guiding helper. It has different ways of being translated, the title. And this poem speaks about basically three different sciences. The first one is the science of Aqidah, or what a Muslim is supposed to believe. The second science is the science of fiqh, so it speaks about the different aspects of fiqh. It speaks about the purifications, the salah, the zakah, fasting, and the pilgrimage, hajj. And he has a last chapter where he speaks about tasawwuf. So this is what I'm going to speak about tonight. Because of my background, I am not the kind of person who does a nice speech. I'm more a teacher. So I always approach my speeches as if I am a teacher, because this is the realm that I'm comfortable with. So sorry if I look very teacher in my how I come across, but this is how I feel comfortable. I'm not a good speaker who makes very nice speeches. I'm more a teacher, so that for you to forgive me for the approach I have. This introduction to the science of Tasawwuf is meant to be done in 3 sessions, and today is going to be one session. What we're going to talk about is the definition of Tasawwuf. What means Tasawwuf, or how it has been defined by the ulama specialists in this realm, in this science. Then a second point we're going to talk about will be first steps of Tasawwuf. How is the first steps in this science? Which are these first steps, or first stations? And therefore these first steps are basically Tawbah and Taqwa. So we're going to talk about what is Tawbah and what is Taqwa. Then we're going to speak about keeping away from what is haram. But we're going to speak about what is haram outwardly speaking. We can speak about what is haram inwardly speaking. And this is basically derived from the definition of taqwa. So it makes sense when you understand what is taqwa, then you have to speak about what is outwardly haram and what is inwardly haram. That is what we're going to, inshallah, try to cover today. But let me just advance you what is going to be the subject of, inshallah, the next 2 sessions, whenever will be the date of these 2 sessions. I'll speak about the inward haram, and therefore the diseases of the heart. Why? Because a person should know them and should remove them. Should remove that diseases of the heart, that inward haram. And so I speak about some of them. The most important, riya, showing off. sum'a, love of prestige, hasad, envy, ujb, conceit, kibr, arrogance. Those are the ones I'll speak a bit more in detail, but there are more than those ones. Then, in this second session, I'll speak about the Shaykh. Because in order to be to purify the heart from these diseases in an effective way, we need a Shaykh. And I'll say why it's needed, the Shaykh. Why the Shaykh is needed. But as I said, this is not going to be the subject of today. This will be the subject of the second session. I'll speak about the functions of the Shaykh, or the duties of the Shaykh, and the conditions. The third day, then I'll speak about the muhasaba, reckoning, dhikr, remembering, mujahadat al-nafs, fighting the nafs, the ego, and the virtues of the heart. And I will mention a number of them, like khawf, fear, raja, hope, sabr, steadfastness, zuhud, doing without, tawakkul, reliance, rida, satisfaction, mahabba, love, sidq, sincerity. And those are some of the virtues of the heart, the most important, and the ones that Ibn Ashir speaks about it in his work. And then the benefits of tasawwuf. What does tasawwuf brings a person? Ma'rifah, gnosis, hurriya, freedom, hubbullah, Allah's love, and Hadrat al-Quds, the pure presence. Then I'll speak about correcting some wrong beliefs about tasawwuf, why so many Muslims believe tasawwuf is a bid'ah, and at the end, conclusions. This will be the full program, inshallah. Today, as I said, we'll leave the questions for the end, inshallah. Today, as I said, we will speak about the 3 points. Definition of tasawwuf, first steps in tasawwuf, which will include Tawbah and Taqwa, and 3, keeping away from the outward haram. I will really appreciate if people concentrate in the words that are going to be said, and try as much as they can. I know sometimes it's necessary, but as much as they can, avoid texting, etc. I know it has become part of our flesh and blood, but I always appreciate if it can be, unless it's an emergency. So let's speak first about the definition of tasawwuf. And why the definition of tasawwuf? Because if we don't know what is something, we cannot judge about that thing. If you want to know if something is good, bad, middle, whatever, first rule is know what is it. Know what are you judging. As the Arabs and the Arab logicians say, al-hukmu far'u tasawwur. Al-hukm far'u tasawwur means al-hukm, judging something, far'u tasawwurin. It's derived from having a clear picture of what is that thing. So we should understand and know what is tasawwuf, and for that we're going to speak about the definition of it. And also because of the famous Arab saying, man jahila shay'an adah, whoever does not know something, whoever ignores something, is ignorant of something, is the enemy of that thing. Many times people have an animosity against something, people of other races, of other nations, of other religions, because they don't know about them. So first thing we have to know, and also I want to add that the fact of a person being in a Sufi tariqah does not mean that he really understands what is tasawwuf. It doesn't mean that he's wrong, but there is no limit for knowledge. I'll tell you, like for example, a person who becomes Muslim, He knows the 5 pillars of Islam, and he knows that he has to believe in Allah and his angels and his books and his messengers, etc. This is what he knows, more or less. He has read a little bit about it, and he's convinced, and he makes the shahada, right? But there is a whole life to know more about it, isn't it? It's not enough. He cannot just limit himself to that very essential and basic knowledge of the deen. The same happens when a person takes and understands the tasawwuf. Tasawwuf, it's almost the path of tasawwuf is almost like a second shahada. It's like a person may have been all his life a Muslim, but then when he wants really to go deep in his deen, is as if he does the shahada again, because he does it with a specific degree of sincerity, and he is fully conscious and he wants to be a Muslim with sincerity, not because his dad and mom told him this is how it has to be, on the Maulana of the neighborhood or whatever, right? So he wants to be a Muslim from his heart. So that is basically what is tasawwuf in one sense, or one of the definitions of tasawwuf. So there is no once he understands this is the path I want to follow, he has to progress in his knowledge of that path. So it's not enough, oh yes, I'm a Sufi, I follow this tariqah and I have this sheikh, that mashallah, but you have to know more about it. And also because, as I was just speaking with a brother about it, there's a lot of people who speak about tasawwuf, but really what they're trying to what they're talking about is not the proper thing, the proper tasawwuf. So they are trying to sell as a product which is not genuine. Somehow, if we can use this business or market terminology, right? So among the definitions of tasawwuf is the definition of Imam al-Junayd rahimahullah, who said التصوف استعمال كل خلق سني وترك كل خلق دني. استعمال كل خلق سني وترك كل خلق دني, which means tasawwuf is to employ or to put into practice every high quality of character and give up every low quality of character. So giving up every low quality of character and taking on every high quality of character. And the Prophet ﷺ is our model for that, because he came to perfect the noble qualities of the character. According to this definition, absolutely nobody, doesn't matter how long he has his beard, will, you know what I mean, will have any problem with this, right? Another definition, and of course the definitions should come from the people of the science. Not an enemy of tasawwuf cannot define for you what is tasawwuf. You have to go to the people of tasawwuf to get the definition. Like for a person who's not an English, has never been in England, to tell you what is England. No, you have to take it from an English person, isn't it? Right. قال الشيخ الإسلام زكريا الأنصاري said رحمه الله التصوف علم تعرف به أحوال تزكية النفس وتصفية الأخلاق وتعمير الظاهر والباطن لنيل السعادة الأبدية, which means Tasawwuf is a science, and this is the title of the talk, Introduction to the Science of Tasawwuf. We're not talking introduction to the movement of Tasawwuf, or introduction to the ideology of Tasawwuf, or introduction to the sect of Tasawwuf, or introduction to the uh, how will you call it, a sect, a movement, a group. No, no. Cult or whatever. No, Tasawwuf is not, you cannot say, oh, there are Salafis and there are Sufis. No, sorry. There is Tasawwuf is a science. The same as we say Aqidah is a science. Fiqh is a science. Ulum al-Hadith, sciences of Hadith, is a science. Tafsir al-Quran is a science. Nahu, grammar, is a science. Al-Balagha, rhetoric, is a science. Mantiq is a science, logic. Usul al-Fiqh, legal methodology, is a science. Is one of the science of the curriculum of Islamic Sciences. Right? If you study it and practice it and know about it, you are a mutasawwif or a Sufi. The same as if you specialize in tafsir al-Quran, you are a mufassir. Specialize in usul fiqh, you are a usuli. Specialize on hadith, you are a muhaddith. Specialize on fiqh, Hanafi, you are a Hanafi faqih. Maliki faqih. It depends on the specialization, and this is a specialization of the fiqh, of the different sciences, but it has a specific difference with the rest. You cannot learn it from books only. Books are a help, but they're not enough. They're not enough. So a person who has a degree in any major university on PhD on Tasawwuf, is not. You cannot say he's a Sufi. He knows about Tasawwuf, but he's not a Sufi because the methodology of this science is very specific. It has its specific methodology. All right, it's not like all the sciences that you can just get them from books or from an academic setup or institution, etc. So he says, Tasawwuf is the science by which you know the state of purification of the self and of character, and building up the outward and the inward in order to attain eternal happiness. Another definition by Shaykh Zarruq, famous, by the way, the Shaykh that I mentioned before, Zakaria al-Ansari, famous faqih and usuli Shafi'i, from the Shafi'i school. Shaykh Zarruq, famous faqih, Maliki faqih, he said, rahimahullah, التصوف علم قصد لإصلاح القلوب وإفرادها لله تعالى عما سواه. Shaykh Ahmed Zarruq, rahimahullah, said, Tasawwuf is a science whose purpose is to reform the heart. His purpose is reform of the heart and its dedication to Allah and nothing else. So the heart is dedicated only to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by a change or reform or a transformation of that heart, which is no more attached to anything other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. قال أبو الحسن الشاذلي, another also famous founder of the Tariqa al-Shadiliyya, and I was a Maliki alim. He said رحمه الله التصوف تدريب النفس على العبودية وردها لأحكام الربوبية. Tasawwuf is accustoming the self to slavehood and causing it to return to the judgments of lordship. So تدريب النفس على العبودية, accustoming the self to slavehood, which is the opposite of thinking that your ego is the center of the universe, which is what this society teaches you, that you have to believe that your ego is the center of the universe. That's why their egos are so big that when they pops, they fall from very high, very high altura, height, very high distance, high up, so they hurt themselves. MashaAllah. And Ibn Ajiba rahimahullah, one of the ulama of the path of Tasawwuf, he said, التصوف هو علم يعرف به كيفية السلوك إلى حضرة ملك الملك وتصفية البواطن من الرذائل وتحليتها بأنواع الفضائل وأول علو ووسطه عمل وآخره موهبة. Which means Tasawwuf is a science by which one knows how to travel to the presence of the King of Kings. Because this is, what are we doing? We are all traveling towards the King of Kings, who is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're all going to meet him. So, whether we like it or not, whether the people is Muslim or is a disbeliever, everybody is going to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But look at the definition. He says كيفية يعرف به كيفية السلوك, the way, the science by which one knows how to travel, how in this life we understand that we are traveling towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We understand that we are in a path towards him. Instead of our life being just something without a meaning, to understand that we are in a path, we are going towards him. Every breath of us is the shortening of the time in which we're going to have that meeting. So how do we live this life? Are we conscious that is where we're going, or we are in another world? And some have also defined tasawwuf as التصوف كله أخلاق فمن زاد عليك بالأخلاق زاد عليك بالتصوف. This is a very important definition. Tasawwuf is, all of tasawwuf is good character, so that whoever has more good character than you has more tasawwuf. The main characteristic and trait of tasawwuf is akhlaq, is al-akhlaq, good character. If a person speaks about tasawwuf and there is no good character in him or her, there is absolutely no tasawwuf. Tasawwuf is based in its beginning, is based in its middle way, it's based in its end absolutely on good character, good adab. And you know the good adab, you know there is tasawwuf, there is not a false claim if there is good adab. When there is no good adab, there is absolutely no tasawwuf. And adab is what makes life among human beings bearable. When there is no adab, life is miserable. So the conflict is when there is no akhlaq. conflict is when there is no adab. Differences, but not differences, clashes is when there is no adab, when there is no akhlaq. And now this is a very important point that I will probably speak about it later on, because this is why the enemies of Islam have identified that if they want to destroy the Muslims, remove from them Tasawwuf, and you'll make them fight among them. So there is you see the enemies of the Muslims, the kuffar, let's call them how the Quran calls them. But when we say the kuffar, I'm not saying the poor person in the street who's been fooled by the media. I'm talking about those who are consciously plotting against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger. They have studied very, very, very careful this deen in order to know where is the spot where you can harm more the Muslims. If you have a mighty enemy, or if you have any enemy, the best way is that you study his characteristics, his way of being. This happens in all realms, even in sport. If there is a team against another team, they see videos of the opponent. How do they act? So they know their enemy. This is the same thing, and they've identified clearly. Tasawwuf, we have to make the Muslims believe Tasawwuf is out of the deen, is not part of the deen. Discredit it. But we can see the historical, political implications of it. Because it's a mistake to think, Tasawwuf has nothing to do with politics, with all this. Tasawwuf is only the heart, getting into a zawiyah with a tasbih. If you study the history of the turuq, you'll see it's absolutely the opposite. But I'm not going to get into that now. That's another aspect of tasawwuf. The definitions of tasawwuf in explanatory sayings are almost 2,000 in number. There's probably 2,000 definitions of tasawwuf. But Shaykh Zarruq, rahimahullah, says that the source of all of them is صدق التوجه إلى الله, which is sincerity, sincerely directing oneself towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is what I said at the beginning. So that sincerity of the person with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with his deen, that's the onset of the whole tasawwuf. Starts like that and carries like that until the end. To be sincere about the deen. No, my parents told me, or I don't know. No. To be sincere. To be truly sincere, which is, sincerity is a virtue of the heart, not a virtue of the beard. Or a virtue of the length of the clothes. And I'm not against anybody who has long beard or long clothes. I'm speaking that we live in a time where we think that is sincerity. That we put long robes, kufi, long beards. With all my respect, as I said, to the people who wear long robes, that's sunnah. And go with the miswak around and say akhi and all that, and that's it. We've got it. So, the essence, خلاصة القول, أن التصوف علم من العلوم المستمدة من الكتاب والسنة، حيث يتعرف المسلم على طرق تطهير القلب وتحسين الأخلاق والسلوك حتى يستطيع أن يعبد الله كأنه يراه. And this is like a summarizing definition that I try to include all the definitions of before, is that Tasawwuf is one of the sciences derived from the book and the Sunnah by which the Muslim comes to know the ways of purification of the heart and improvement of character and travel in the path until he is able to worship Allah as he could see him. And that is the definition of ihsan in the famous hadith of Sayyiduna Jibreel alayhi salam, when the Prophet ﷺ asked him, Mal ihsanu, what is ihsan? He said, ihsan an ta'bud Allah ka'annaka tarah fa in lam takun tarah fa innahu yarak. That you worship Allah as if you see him, and if you don't see him, know that he's seeing you. And this is a famous hadith. Is I think is the second hadith from the 40 hadith, right? So as I stated in this definition, is one of the sciences derived from the book and the Sunnah by which the Muslim comes to know the ways of purification of the heart and improvement of character and travel in the path until he is able to worship Allah as if he could see him. So Tasawwuf, also called Sufism, is the science of purifying the heart and character in order to attain nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The heart is the seat of intention, and all action is based on intention, as is known. Thus Tasawwuf is the heart of Islam. Tasawwuf is the heart of Islam because it deals with the heart. And if you remove Tasawwuf from Islam, then you have removed the central processor of the whole thing. Like the most important, the motherboard, like they say about the computer, the most essential element of the deen. Right? So now you can understand why the aim of the enemies of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger has been to target this science. To target it, because by targeting it and by discrediting it and by making a barrier between the Muslims and this science, they will win. And they will have the upper hand. Yeah? That's the reality of it. Although you take any person who claims to be a Salafi and you read to him this definition and you tell him Tasawwuf is one of the sciences derived from the book and the Sunnah by which the Muslims comes to know the ways of purification of the heart and improvement of character and traveling the path until he is able to worship Allah as if he could see him, and he'll tell you, I have nothing against that. So also these people who call themselves enemies of Tasawwuf, the truth is that if they are learned and they know the deen, they will know that their leader, Shaykh Ibn Taymiyyah, he spoke very highly about Tasawwuf, and he was on a tariqah, the Qadiriyya tariqah. And of his Fatawi, which is I think is 32 volumes, volume 10 and volume 11 are all about Tasawwuf. So, what are you telling me? What are you telling us? It's utmost of ignorance to say that. To say Tasawwuf is bid'ah or Tasawwuf is out of the deen. It's just absolute ignorance. It's a redefinition of the deen that has happened just recently. Right? Imam Malik said, his famous statement, من تصوف ولم يتفقه فقد تزندق ومن تفقه ولم يتصوف فقد تفسق ومن جمع بينهما فقد تحقق. It's a famous statement from Imam Malik, which means whoever takes on Tasawwuf without taking the fiqh becomes heretical, and whoever takes the fiqh without taking Tasawwuf becomes a transgressor. Only he who combines the two proves to be true. What does it mean? It means that the balance of the deen is by taking this science of Tasawwuf and the sciences of the Sharia together, because the turuq and the Sufi tariqas become unbalanced when there is no concern with the knowledge of the Sharia. And the knowledge of the Sharia, when there is no Tasawwuf, it's only a empty shell, and it has no transformation of the heart. It's just a set of rules without a meaning. So the balance is when both come together and become made possible to the deen to really be a reality. Is like, as I've always been told, like two wings of an airplane, which have to be perfectly the same size and balanced in order for that plane to be able to fly. You have the wing of the Sharia and the wing of the Haqiqah. If you only take one, or one is shorter than the other, or whatever, it will be a disaster. There will be no flying. So also, it is important, and it is an important thing for the people who say, "Oh, I'm only interested in tasawwuf and dhikr." No, only that. Without learning your deen, it's not enough. You should learn your deen, in each one in the measure that in according to his own capacity and his function in his life. But you cannot be an ignorant of your deen. You should learn it, and you should learn properly how to pray and properly how to do wudu and other elements related to the deen. So nobody can come to you with some spiritual claim, and you will swallow it. As the people of Tasawwuf said, if a person flies in the air but is doing something haram, run away from him, as you will run from a lion that wants to devour you. What does it mean? A person flying in the air means he has reached a spiritual level that he flies in the air or walks on the water. But if he is transgressing the Sharia, run away from him. But you have to know the Sharia in order to know whether this person is transgressing or not. Otherwise, he will take a glass of wine and recite some Quran, then tell you, drink it if you want to, or some nonsense. Can be done in many ways. This is just a very obvious example. Ibn Khaldun, the famous historian and alim, said that this purification of the heart was the general rule among the Salaf. But when involvement in dunya became widespread from the 2nd century, those devoted to worship came to be called Sufiya or Ahl Tasawwuf. That means that Tasawwuf was a reality among the Sahaba and the Tabi'in and Atba' Tabi'in. So if you are a real Salafi, you have to be a Sufi. Right? What happened is that when some people started involved in dunya, those who remain faithful to the way of the Sahaba and the Tabi'in, Atba' Tabi'in, they started to be singled out and known as Sufis. Also Ahl Tasawwuf. It is said that the name Tasawwuf comes from Suf, wool, which these people used to wear, or that it refers to Ahl Suffa, the poor companions who left everything to live in the bench Suffa by the Prophet's mosque sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this companion used to live in that bench. Other things are also said as far as its etymology is concerned. So some say it comes from Safa, which means purity. So some say it comes from Sufa, which a wool? Tuft of wool that goes wherever the wind takes it, without any opposition. That is the person of the Sufi. Tasawwuf, as I said before, is not taken from books, as inner purity is not quantifiable like fiqh. Like, for example, knowing dhuhr is 4 rakats, etc. You cannot say, oh, I've got 7 degrees of mahabba of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and now I have less units of envy in my heart. That's not possible to quantify it. Rather, it is a knowledge passed on from man to man in an unbroken chain back to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the heart is its container. The teachings passed down in such a chain is called tariqah. And while the aim is identical, the methods may vary from one tariqah to another, and within each depending of time and place. And this is a very important thing, that the people of Tasawwuf, as they say, at Sufi ibn Waqsi, the Sufi is the son of his time. So the people of Tasawwuf really know how to adapt the deen to the reality of the time and the place where they live, without corrupting it or without redefining it in a way which is heretical. That's the element of the people of the South. They know how to do it. So that's why I really have my reservations about these people who say, yeah, we are Sufis, and they are so strict in one sense that they're extremely strict, and is a way of being strict that it does not befit the time and place where they are. I mean, there is always a limit. You cannot be so loose that your deen is gone and the person start falling in what is haram. But we live in a difficult time and in a difficult place. Sometimes you cannot adhere to the letter of your madhab. We're not saying to the letter of the Sharia, to the letter of your madhab. And I am a person who respects the madhab. I follow one madhab. But that madhab cannot be something that makes your life too strict and makes it in a way that is not the correct way to be in the place and time where you are. We are in a place where we have to call the people to the deen. I have my humble opinion, and this is a matter of fiqh, is that Muslims cannot just come to this country and that's it, this country or Europe or whatever, as if nothing happens because it's open. Sorry. It's not just like that. If we are here, we have to be here for a reason. Otherwise, we better go back. If we're here for dunya, we better go back from where we came. And that's the Prophet ﷺ made it clear. In the first hadith that you find Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, عن عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله عنه قال إنما الأعمال بالنيات وإنما لكل امرئ ما نوى فمن كانت هجرته لله ورسوله فهجرته إلى الله ورسوله ومن كانت هجرته لدنيا يصيبها امرأة ينكحها فهجرته إلى ما هاجر إليه. It means actions are according to intention. Whoever hijrah was for Allah and His Messenger, his hijrah was for Allah and His Messenger. And whoever hijrah was for dunya, to get some dunya or to marry some woman, so his hijrah is for that. And you can see the difference. And have we come here for dunya or we've come here for something else? That is a serious question we have to ask ourselves. I don't want to get to that that line because we can speak a lot about it. But anyway, as I said, the tariqas are traced back to Imam Al-Junayd, rahimahullah, died in 297 of the Hijrah, who was the first to formalize Tasawwuf as a science. He said, all the paths to Allah are, I said in Arabic, الطرق إلى الله تعالى مسدود على خلقه إلا على المقتفين آثار الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم. So he said, all the paths to Allah are closed, save for the one traveling in the footsteps of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There is no tasawwuf out of Islam, and there is no tasawwuf without following the Sharia. End of the story. All these Sufi-Wufi stories has nothing to do with the deen. Has nothing to do with tasawwuf. This a new agey tariqa has nothing to do with the Tasawwuf al-Junaydi. I was called the Tasawwuf of Imam al-Junayd, which is the Tasawwuf, the true Tasawwuf inherited from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right, I've been talking now for a long time, and I'll carry on talking. This is just the definition. We have just covered point 1. So if you allowed me, I carry on with point 2.
Sheikh, do you mind if I serve tea at the same time?
No. Wait a bit.
The questions?
Yeah, there will be questions. Yeah, there will be. I finish, tea, and then questions.
Okay.
So let's speak about Tawbah. Tawbah is the first element of Tasawwuf. Tawbah is the first element of Tasawwuf. As Ibn Ashir says in his Murshid al-Mu'in, وَتَوْبَةٌ مِّن كُلِّ ذَنْبٍ يُجْتَرَمْ تَجِبُ فَوْرًا مُطْلَقًا وَهِيَ النَّدَمْ. Tawbah means to turn away from all transgressions, ma'asi, all transgressions, to turn away from all transgressions with sincere regret. And this is not something that, all right, I'll do tawbah when I'll reach probably 75 years old. Now I'm young, 20, 25, let me... all right, you're going to die in 76, so you do tawbah in 75. So you know when you're going to die. You've got a... death happens only in TV and newspapers. Doesn't happen. No. We don't know. We don't know. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. So it is obligatory immediately, without any delay. Any postponement of tawbah requires a tawbah for it. So if a person does something wrong or has done something wrong, he has to do tawbah of it. If he delays it, he has to do tawbah for that wrong thing and for delaying the tawbah. Exactly. Thank you. Right? And tawbah means, as I said, to turn away from all transgressions, whether they are minor or major, whether they're against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or against the people, whether they are known that you know them or you don't know them. That's an obligation. And without that, there is no way that a person can put a foot on the path of Tasawwuf. Tawbah has 3 conditions. First, ceasing the act. If a person is involved into doing something that is haram, he has to stop at that time, at that moment, immediately. Right? For example, if a person is speaking, backbiting a person, at that moment he has to stop and make tawbah. If a person is involved in haram financial transactions, he has to stop. It doesn't say, well, until I finish, then. Or is involved in a haram interaction. I'm not going to go further. You can say, now let me finish and then I go Tawbah. No, you have to stop there. And stopping with sincere intention of never repeat it again. If you say, no, stop, Tawbah, Tawbah. Well, tomorrow probably. Or after a week, when she phoned me again. No. You see? That is no Tawbah at all. Because you have in your agenda to go back to it. So there's no Tawbah. Tawbah means that's it. Right? So stop. And stop forever. And if any damage has been caused to people or property, one should repair it as best as one is able. So you cannot steal from people property, blah, 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 and they say, no, Tawbah, I'm never going to do it, but this money doesn't go out from my bank account. No. No, you have to return that. If something has been wrong to a person, that thing should be repaired. And doing astaghfirullah, but that is, to say astaghfirullah is like a plus. But Tawbah is not, I say astaghfirullah, that's it, I'm doing Tawbah. No. Tawbah is what happens in the heart. That you live it forever. You live it and live it forever. And if something has been, you've wronged the person, you repair that wrong. That is Tawbah. Not take my tasbih and do astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah, and that's it. If that thing hasn't happened in the heart first, there is no Tawbah. Tawbah is the first step to the next one, which is Taqwa. Taqwa, which is the second step in the way of Tasawwuf. It says, وحاصل التقوى اجتناب الامتثال في ظاهر وباطن بذاتنا فجاءت الأقسام حقا أربعة وهي للسالك سبل المنفعة. What does it mean? It means that taqwa is to protect oneself. That is the definition of taqwa. Sometimes it's translated as fear of Allah. That's not a proper translation. Taqwa means to protect oneself from that which will harm one in the akhirah. To protect oneself from that will harm us in the hereafter. And how a person protects himself or herself from that? By performing every outward obligation, performing every inward obligation, avoiding every outward haram, and avoiding every inward haram. These are the four ways or the four parts of taqwa. Perform every outward obligation, everything that Allah has obliged us to do with our limbs, salah, siyam, zakah, hajj, whatever is obligatory on us, we have to do it. Whatever Allah has forbade us to do, we have to avoid it. Whatever is haram, we have to avoid it. And the same thing, but inwardly, as far as the heart is concerned. The obligations of the heart and the prohibitions of the heart. So that puts us in a situation where we should know it. So what are the things that are obligatory for us to do outwardly? What are the things that are obligatory for us to do inwardly? What are the things that are forbidden for us to do outwardly? And what are the things that are forbidden for us to do inwardly? So you can see that without that knowledge, you cannot advance. That's why tasawwuf without knowledge is impossible. You need to know. إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاءُ. Certainly have fear of Allah from among His servants, the ulama. Means those who have knowledge. If you don't have knowledge, you can't. What was the name of the period before Islam? Everybody should know it. It means the time of. So Islam is not a beard and my name is Muhammad or my name is Abdullah. No, it's knowledge. There are evidences of the Quran, and it's not necessary that I speak about all these evidences, or the Book of Allah, but I just want to speak about the next and last point, which is keeping away from the outward haram. So I'm not going to speak today about the inward haram or the outward obligation or inward obligation. I'm just going to speak about the outward haram. Avoiding what is haram is harder on the nafs than performing what is obligatory. To do what is obligatory, that's easier. But not to do what is haram, that's why you find a lot of people, again, for a long beard, sorry for the long beard, poor people of the long beard, but we have an external aspect of Taqwa, but when it has to do with financial transactions, that's the last person you want to deal with him or her. Alright? He doesn't care about it. His pocket is his pocket, and and that he has his own rules and his own Sharia in his pocket.
Sorry, Shaykh, do you mind if I change the...
Go ahead.
Let's come and sit down in the front, please. Come and sit on the floor.
No, let him sit down.
I think it's better with the men at the front.
No, if they're comfortable, sit wherever you're comfortable. Unless you have something against him.
No, I thought it was nice if everyone's
Whatever. Yeah. So, about which are these outward haram that a person should guard himself from it? This is this he should guard the 7 parts, the 7 limbs of the body from committing what is haram. Which are the 7 limbs of the body that are the ones that can commit the haram? Eyes, mouth, ears, tongue, genitals, belly, yeah, feet, and hands. These are the 7 parts of the body that we should guard them from committing the haram. Like, for example, as far as the eyes are concerned, like haram, we should lower the eyes from what is haram to look at. People nakedness. And when I say people, also images of people. People's physical defects. Don't stare at the person with a physical defect. It harms that person. Women with lust and vice versa. Snooping regarding people's property without their permission. Looking at other Muslims with contempt. With that way of looking, etc. Is from offensive speech such as backbiting, which means to mention anything behind a person's back that person would dislike. So if you say something about a person that person would dislike you to say that about him or her, that's backbiting. Even if it's true that person has that trait, that defect or whatever. And if it's not true, that's a buhtan. That is another category of offense. Tale carrying, namima. Like, for example, oh, do you know what he said about you? That's the worst thing a person can say. Because you put in 2 brothers, or 2 sisters, one against the other. You say what she said about you. Of course, if it's something bad, not if it's something good. That's a kabira. That's a bad thing to do. A perjury, which is giving false testimony, lying, to knowingly claim something is otherwise than what it really is, or listening to the voice of an unrelated member of the opposite sex with lust. Guarding the tongue, the tongue from saying these things, not only hearing these things. So the the ears and the tongue from saying these things that I've said, and the ears by listening to that. So if some person says that, you should change the conversation or get out of that place. Guarding the stomach from the haram. So food which has been usurped or bought with money which has been stolen or usurped, slaughtered meat, flowing blood, pork, intoxicating beverages, drugs, and hashish, etc., etc., etc. There's no different opinions about hashish. No, hashish is haram. End of the story. In the 4 schools of fiqh. Some people come around, no, well, yes, but if it is hashish, no, hashish is haram. This tobacco, there may be differences of opinion. Hashish is another story. All this, I'm saying hashish, and it's because it's one of the lowest drugs, that affects the intellect.
And shisha.
Shisha.
Haram.
If it's tobacco, there is differences of opinion. Of course, guarding the private parts from sodomy, fornication, adultery, masturbation, according to the strongest position. So these are, not letting the hands reach that which is haram. Touching that is haram for you to touch. And not letting the feet carry one to the place where that haram is going to be committed. So as you see, all this implies to know the deen. And I've just spoken about a small section of it. And the last thing that I want to say is this verse 299 from Muslim. It says, وَيُوقِفُ الْأُمُورَ حَتَّى يَعْلَمَ مَا اللَّهُ فِيهِنَّ بِهِ قَدْ حَكَمَ. One should approach no matter until he knows Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala judgment by asking the people of knowledge. That means that that it is obligatory for a person involved in selling, renting, businesses, partnership, etc., to know the general rules pertaining to this. So some people go to the alim to ask him about the rak'ats, about fasting, about some people ask for zakah, marriage, divorce, menstruation. But when it comes to financial transactions, they go to the director of the bank, right? Because they think the Sharia doesn't have to do with that. The Sharia has to do with everything. And a person should not undertake or approach a matter until he or she knows what is the judgment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala concerning that. So by this, I will finish my talk of today. As I said, this is just the first part of it. It is about the first steps in the path of Tasawwuf. And you have probably noticed how important is the Sharia and the knowledge of the Sharia and the knowledge of what is halal and what is haram and what we should do and what we should not do. And there is no Tasawwuf without this, and no Tasawwuf without this knowledge. And a person who says, no, I'm a Sufi, I belong to this Sharia, and he does not or she does not care and about these matters and learn these matters, this person is fooling himself, because this is the correct step in the way to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We cannot come to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unless we purify ourselves. And we have to purify ourselves outwardly and inwardly. Outwardly and inwardly. Obviously, the heart is the most important, because if the heart is clean, the rest will be clean. But we should know when we should have knowledge of what is haram and what is halal. And inshallah, in further occasions, further sessions, we will talk about what is haram for the heart and what is a disease of the heart that should be removed, and what are the virtues of the heart that should be acquired. And inshallah, so we leave it here, and we will have a break with the tea, I believe, and then when the tea is served, we can have the questions and answers session. All right. So سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين الحمد لله رب العالمين. Thank you very much.